Hey, it's Fitz, and if you don't know who I am, here's a quick bio. I'm a veteran sports journalist who writes, does TV, radio, daily YouTube videos, and I'm a longtime podcaster. Also, I have metastatic stage 4 prostate cancer that came out of remission in January of 23. During the pandemic, my doctors advised me to stay at home, and the Life of Fitz podcast was born. My original diagnosis forecast that I would be dead by age 60. But as I start season 5 of this podcast, I am 60 and still calling the many friends, athletes, coaches, colleagues, and medical advisors who I've met throughout my life. Oh, and I'm still hitting the record button and now doing so on video. Welcome to my life and the Life of Fitz podcast. Presented by the great people at Blueville Nursery in Manhattan. This podcast is fun because the guests are kind of organic. You know, in some ways, who's available this week? Because it's been difficult this summer to get guests locked down. Everyone's doing their own thing. Summers used to be slow, and I don't think it's that way. But I'm also in the position right now where I got to stack up a few of these because the 4th of July is coming. Then we're going to Big 12 Media Days in the middle of the following week. So I want to have them done. I don't want to rush any of these, and I want to get them right. But I worked really hard to find this guest. I texted my neighbor, Tim, see if he could come over and talk. He's actually very interesting. You're going to find that out. You know, I know him as my neighbor. We garden. We do a lot of landscaping. We have a great relationship with Tim and Cathy. Becky and I just enjoy them so much. We've been blessed by this neighborhood. We moved in this house 2003, and we've been close with a lot of neighbors, including Will and Holly on one side and Tim and Cathy on the other. And we watched the girls across the street grow up, and now they're both married. It really has been a great place over the last 21 years. And we're blessed to have Tim and Cathy next door because we have a lot in common. But what's not in common is he has a really important job, and I talk about sports. Tim actually was the person in charge of the building of the National Bio and Agro-defense facility in Manhattan, Kansas. Over a 12-year period, he oversaw the construction of NBAF. He's now turned it over to the people that will operate it. And while the pathogens aren't here yet, he's done his job. He's now kind of working on other projects for the government, but they're staying put, thankfully. We were worried they'd move. And so it's a really cool relationship we've had, but I've never really dug in and asked him about what went into building NBAF. It's an enormous project. You just don't throw up the building. You've got so many levels of security and containment that you have to worry about. And all of the things that people have worried about putting this facility in the middle of America has been allayed by the fact that I know the guy building it did it right, and I understand the science behind what they're doing. Nobody questions the CDC being in the middle of Atlanta, one of our major cities, but everyone is worried about having the equivalent for ag and animal stuff in Manhattan, Kansas. It'll be okay. I'm pretty sure of that. And this is a really interesting discussion we're about to have to find out what went into the building of this monstrosity that is now in Manhattan, Kansas. And it's pretty cool to hear him describe it. Let's get to our talk now with my neighbor who walked over, Tim Barr, right here in Manhattan, Kansas. There he is. It's my neighbor. Thanks for making the long journey to the house.
Well, you didn't send a car. I was a little disappointed by that.
Could have sent a poodle. Dude would have been more than happy.
Poodle.
Yeah. Dude would have been more than happy to come see Uncle Tim and escort him in.
Yes.
So when did you guys move in next door?
So we actually took possession in March of 17, but we hadn't sold our house yet, so we didn't actually move in until July of 17.
Okay.
And that's a whole other story in itself. But anyway.
But you moved from another house here in Manhattan to the slums. Let's be honest.
No. We loved it. This is the kind of house we were looking for all along.
It's a little bit older neighborhood.
Yep.
When was our house was built in 68? Do you know yours?
68.
Yeah.
Yep.
My wife and her mid-century modern stuff.
Yep.
Very happy. But so about 1 year from that, you moved in July, and then I had my prostate removed on July 3rd of 2018. I walked out my front door with a bag of urine Remember this?
I do.
And I just kind of walked out, and I'm holding it's not the actual catheter bag you strap to your leg. It's the one you put on your nightstand. It's like carrying a purse of, urine. And you're like, what are you doing? And I'm going to get those rabbits off our hostas.
Excellent. Excellent approach, sir.
It worked. I've thought about selling my, my urine, for drug testing.
I'm going to stay away from that one.
As a former government contractor, you're not going
to. I'm still a federal employee, so I'm going to stay away from that one. So, and maybe some other questions that are coming now.
Tell me about your crimes. Any crime sprees out there?
No,
any bodies in McPherson I need to know about?
Sir.
Okay, let's go there. Let's start there before we get into the serious stuff. You're a Kansan.
Yeah.
Give me your journey here.
Let's see, the short story or the Dorothy story. I say Dorothy, that was my mom. She'd tell a story, and then it'd branch out, then it would branch. And so my sisters and I, it's like, is this the Dorothy version or
we get to the facts?
I'll just go right to it. Yeah. So went to McPherson High, born, raised McPherson. First went to Emporia State on football scholarship. Took like intro to everything for 3 years, and didn't really know what I wanted to do career wise. And then I thought, hey, I need a job someday. Man, that engineering thing, that looks pretty good.
That's just an easy switch.
So I started taking, early calculus, pre-calc, and because I hadn't taken all the math stuff in high school like a lot of kids do. Started taking some physics classes there. Then eventually transferred to K-State, got my engineering degree. Took a little effort. Got a job out at Fort Riley to start. Worked there for a couple of years, civil engineering intern. And my degree's in civil engineering. So even though I've worked on nuclear stuff and with NBAF, I'm not a scientist. I'm an engineer and project management person. So then after Fort Riley for a couple of years, got a job still with the Army, with 4th Army Headquarters in the Chicago suburbs, building Army Reserve centers around the Great Lakes area, which was a blast. Because we would do construction, we would also lease facilities. And so we'd go work with developers, to either build the lease or go lease an old facility, renovate it, turn it into an Army Reserve Center. Huh. So I got to start interacting with the public a lot on things like that, and got accused of some really interesting things by people at some of these meetings.
I bet.
Hey, you have nuclear missiles in there.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Anyway. And so then went from 4th Army Headquarters there in the Chicago suburbs to the Department of Energy at the Chicago office there at Argonne National Lab. And that's the point at which I started getting involved in what you would call like mega projects, very large, multiple billions. First, starting with environmental restoration and cleanup projects at some Department of Energy sites that were run by the Office of Science. So Brookhaven Lab, Argonne Lab, Idaho Lab, out in Idaho, Fermi National Lab, where they're not as bad as some of the Department of Defense areas where they had done nuclear weapons development, but still there was, from the Cold War era, a lot of cleanup that had to be done. So, billions of dollars there, large projects. I was not in charge, but supporting that and kind of getting my feet wet in the large project area. Then while I was in Chicago, a gentleman, also K-State grad, Bob Selby, came to me and said, hey, what do you know about nuclear energy? And he's a nuclear engineering grad from K-State. And I said, well, I know that, it produces electricity. So I got involved in a...
You had a vast knowledge.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got involved in a nuclear nonproliferation program, the MOX program, run by National Nuclear Security Agency, which is part of the Department of Energy, that the goal was basically in tandem with the Russians to take plutonium that we didn't need for nuclear weapons anymore and turn it into nuclear fuel, burn it in a reactor so that it couldn't be used for weapons anymore. That's the really short story. Okay. And that was a mega project in itself, fascinating technically. I hired a contractor to work on that, which was a French company, was one of the partners, oddly enough, because they had an existing technology for doing this in France. In France, they embrace what they called recycling of the nuclear fuel.
Right.
So they take it, and after it's been irradiated, to then reprocess it to get the plutonium and or uranium oxide out of it and use it again. We don't do that in this country. It's basically once through a nuclear reactor, then you go bury it. So they had this technology for making nuclear fuel out of plutonium. And so they were part of the contract team. And so we went forward with that. So that was another interesting thing.
That's cool.
But as politics drug on and different things happened, some decisions were made, and that program kind of went away. I actually also then worked for the Corps of Engineers after that in kind of a sister program, did a couple years down in Aiken, South Carolina, working at the Savannah River site on also nuclear nonproliferation stuff, but in a little bit different light. So those are the areas where I got like exposed to like really large, big, complex projects.
Interesting.
So then while we were in South Carolina, which we love, we had friends down there already that I was working with, and it was a nice experience. Was kind of looking for jobs to get back to the Midwest, and saw this advertisement that, hey, they needed somebody in Manhattan, Kansas for this NBAF thing. I'm like, well, what is that? So as it turns out, one of my former coworkers, Jamie Johnson, who had left Department of Energy to go work for Homeland Security when they were standing it up, I called him. I said, hey, Jamie, what do you know about this project? It sounds kind of interesting. And he laughed. He goes, well, that's under me. He goes, I'm the selecting official for this job.
Nice.
So long story short, he let other people decide on the hiring. He had other people working under him, left the hiring in their hands. But I got hired and then moved from South Carolina back to Manhattan. Well, actually to Manhattan. It's been a long time since I've been here. But I still, to this day, will get nudged by my old South Carolina friends because we moved here. I was actually hired in December of 2010. We moved here in January of 2011. And one of my first days on the site, back then, the site was basically a pile of dirt, a couple of old construction trailers, no indoor plumbing. So we had porta potties. So one of my first days actually in the office in the trailer might have been early February by that time, big snowstorm. And I go out to the porta potty and the toilet area is just covered with snow because it's come in the vents. It's the really fine snow. And so I took a picture of that, sent it to my South Carolina friends and said, hey, we tried to tell you,
Yeah, no doubt.
But it's been a blast. And so that's the short story, Tim, on how I got here.
I didn't know, but you dealt with nuclear weapons and
no, not nuclear weapons.
You have some, don't you? They were right in Chicago.
No
wonder that thing's sticking out of the garage.
No.
I'm quite sure your bosses love that
I knew
joke.
I was going to regret this.
So you ended up getting the job.
Yep.
And what was your official title of the project for the project?
So it changed. I started off as a construction project manager.
Yeah.
To be the on-site person, but then I eventually became the overall program manager. So when I was the construction, project manager, I was in charge of just construction, but the overall program at that time also then included the operational stand-up of the lab. Okay, now we've constructed it and commissioned it. Now we need to do the operational stand-up to get regulatory approval to bring pathogens into the facility. So I was eventually then in charge of that part as well. But as I think we've talked about before, subsequent to that legislation in 2019 that was in the president's budget, then the budget was enacted, so it became law, where the U.S. Department of Agriculture took over operation of the facility. So at that point, my duties were then still just for the construction and commissioning of the facility. So I went from construction project manager to program manager, and then I stayed program manager, even though part of those responsibilities got lopped off. They
didn't trust you. I understand.
Thank you so much.
But can you kind of put into words the scope of this project? It's just absolutely amazing watching what happened, because so much happened at the site before anything started to go up, right? And there was a lot of prep work that had to go into this.
Yeah, there was.
You're not throwing down a slab and building a building.
No, it's not an apartment complex. So just on its face, biocontainment facilities like this are very complex.
Right.
And one of the main reasons for the complexity is various levels of safety systems. But in a biocontainment facility, I would say the primary safety system is the movement of air. So you use negative air pressure the deeper you go in the facility, so that air, to put it simply, is always moving towards the bad stuff. So if you first go into containment, like from the change room, where the initial corridor of containment is at a lower pressure than the change room you come out of. So you open the door to go into containment, air flows into containment, not out. You don't want it to flow out. Okay, you're walking around the hallways, the corridors in containment. You go into a lab room, you open that door, that room's at a lower pressure than the corridor. So you can imagine, and I can't remember the square footage of all the animal rooms and the general lab space, but it's very, very large. And you have tens of thousands of cubic feet of air moving through there, a minute, an hour, because you have these control systems that have all these air handling units that, as people are coming and going in and out of containment, they automatically maintain these air pressure differentials.
It's crazy.
Well, it's not, and it's analogous to what's done in a nuclear facility as well, in a nuclear processing facility, not necessarily a nuclear reactor facility. But yeah, it is quite complex. It's not, so then you overlay that with, the challenges that we had, with budget. We had reviews by the National Academies of Science. That's no other biocontainment facilities ever had the scrutiny that NBAF had. And not that it's a bad thing, it's something we just had to contend with. So it's not straightforward. Then the changeover from operator from DHS to USDA, we've found no other precedent of something like that ever happening. You have instances where, yes, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will build facilities for the Air Force, for another agency, but that's the approach going in. This was in the middle of the acquisition of the facility. Okay, hey, you guys were managing this before for operations. Okay, now you guys are going to do it. And I got to say, it's quite amazing that USDA and DHS working, to successfully get that done. And we still partner with them. We're looking to have future partnerships with them in research and all that. But that was quite a massive change for us to undertake.
So, I mean, sewage, incoming, outcome, all that stuff has to be controlled.
Yes, it does.
You can't get into it, but
no. Well, so to put it simply, all the waste, whether it's solid waste or liquid waste that comes out of the facility, is treated under pressure and at high temperature. So they have, what are they, like 7,500 gallons, I think, I can't recall now, tanks for liquid waste processing. There's 11 of these things. They look like miniature submarines all lined up in a row. It's actually quite impressive.
Crazy.
So basically all the liquid waste from containment goes into these tanks. They shut them, and then they raise the temperature and they raise the pressure, and that cooks for a specified, amount of time to kill whatever pathogens. And then you use bioindicators when you do that, and you use a bioindicator that's harder to kill under those conditions than the pathogens you're doing research on.
Gotcha.
So then you test when you're done with the cooking of the material. Okay, there's no trace of the bioindicator, so we're good. That's the short story.
That's crazy.
So,
That's
and then
amazing.
solid waste is treated in the same way, temperature and pressure, and then incinerated. We have medical waste incinerators in the facility that are really a second line of defense, I guess you could call it. There was my good friend Eugene Cole, who was our technical director for the facility, basically saying we kill the pathogens, we kill them again, and then we kill them twice more, just to make sure, But yeah, it's very complex. But when you break it all down, it's just, what is the old saying? How you eat an elephant, one bite at a time, and that's kind of what you do. You take all this complex stuff and break it down.
So how long was construction?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. So we finished, thinking back, so actual site preparation right before I started, I believe started in November of 2010. And we finished actual construction in May of 22.
All right.
Yes.
May of 22.
That's the end of construction. There were things that changed.
Mhm.
COVID changed us. We added on some scope, working with USDA. We did some different things, but we were actually done with construction in May of 22. There was still testing that went on after that. And so all that testing, the commissioning testing, wasn't done until finally December of 22. But the actual construction aspects we considered done in May of 2022. So
12 years?
Yeah, something like that. And there were pauses in between, waiting for money. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
We have the same thing with our projects at our house.
Okay.
We're currently waiting on more money.
Okay.
If taxpayers could chip in, it'd make our gardening a lot easier. It really would.
Very good.
I don't know if you, I know you had a little extra laying around. Did you bring any of it to the neighborhood? No, you gave it back to the state of Kansas.
I gave it all back to the state, which I got to say was actually quite remarkable.
It is.
For this to have gone on this long and for us still to come in under budget. Yeah, that was, you don't see that every day.
No.
Usually it's the other way around. Hey, we need a little bit more. We need a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be doing a little skimming, right?
You might be. I would not, because that would be illegal, and I like my job.
Yeah. But how much was it? It was a lot of money.
$10,082,355.80.
Damn.
I sent the email back, said, hey, don't spend this all in one place.
The 80 cents is going to go a long ways in the state of Kansas. That's really cool, though. I mean, so you've turned it over now, right?
It's been wired back. I actually don't know what they're doing with it.
No, I don't mean this. The actual facility.
I'm sorry.
They're not trusting you to run that thing.
Thank you, Tim.
No problem.
So
here to keep you humble.
So one of the things we did, we finished our testing, and then we achieved a milestone we call contractually substantial completion in December of 22. And at that point, USDA had full access to the facility. But what we had done, because of COVID delays and other issues in commissioning the facility, we did something that was quite novel and unusual. Is we worked with USDA to set up a phased transition to operations. Usually on a project like this, you don't want anybody in doing stuff until you're completely done,
right?
Because you don't want that interference with your contractor and their contractor raising your hand. Well, I could have got that done, but these guys are in my way. So here's my bill for how much more it's going to cost. We coordinated with the contractor, and so. For example, USDA took over guard force responsibilities in April of 21. They started operating the central utility plant in April of 21. So the central utility plant is exterior to the main lab. It houses the boilers, chillers, emergency diesel generators, and all the gas that comes in from outside, and the electric power that comes in from outside comes into the cup first, and then goes over to the main lab. So they started operating that portion of the facility in April of 2021. Then later in October of 2021, they took over operation and maintenance for the entire campus. We previously had a contractor doing that for us.
Yeah.
So then USDA took that over. So that allowed them to be in the facility, get accustomed to the certain aspects of the facility, the complexities of the facility, and start their planning for how they're going to get regulatory approval to operate later on down the road and bring pathogens into the facility. Between then April and October of 21 up until December of 2022, when we finished our testing and handed over full operation of the facility to them at that time. So it's a different approach than has been used in other projects, but it became a necessity given the circumstances of COVID and then other issues, and then adding on some additional scope to support USDA, and then honestly some technical issues we had in commissioning the facility. And those technical issues were, oh my God, this thing doesn't work. It's the tweaking of things that you cannot necessarily predict in the design of a complex facility.
Interesting.
For some people, yes.
So I'm impressed. Let's take a short break and hear from our sponsor, Blueville Nursery.
For competitively priced landscape design, irrigation, and lawn maintenance, turn to Blueville Nursery, a family-owned business with more than 50 years of experience. You can trust the Blueville team to design and create a landscape that will accentuate your property's aesthetics. And visit our garden store 6 days a week for the best products in the area. From ornamental trees, shrubs, and flowers, Blueville has it all. Blueville Nursery, located on West Anderson Avenue in Manhattan, Kansas.
Now, let's return to the studio. I'm impressed, but the pathogens aren't here yet.
Nope.
Then you won't tell me when they're coming, but I just want to put this out there.
Okay.
Look, it's got to be top secret, right? Right. So, I mean, you can't just let everyone know where it's coming or how it's
I'm
coming.
not involved in it, so I don't know anymore.
Well, I want you to be involved with it because here's my idea. And I know your bosses are watching. They'll probably like this. We'll just get like a big minivan and we'll go on a road trip and we'll put all that stuff in the back of the minivan and drive it out. Nobody will suspect.
So when you say we, that means you and your other neighbors, not we with me.
Well,
Just to be clear.
I don't trust my other neighbors, Tim. I don't trust Will at all to do this.
Okay. Well,
Will will tell everyone what's in the car. He'll just like walk up to everyone and tell them.
Okay, fine.
I don't think we should do it now. I've changed my mind.
All right.
But amazing thing that you built. And
It was a blast.
yeah, I mean, it had to be just. I can't even imagine the complexity of.
Hey, can I put some names out real quick?
Do it. Yeah.
Because as the program manager, I'm always out front doing stuff. But man, we had just an amazing team. And I've said this before. Is really this group, we had like 10 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, the security guy is not on here, but that's okay. Managing this huge beast. And so these folks operated like a military special ops unit.
Wow.
Everybody knew their job very well. They knew what the other guy's job was, and everybody could count on each other to do their job without hesitation. So we were able to get this done. But I just got to give a shout out.
Sure.
So Eugene Cole was our technical lead. He's now retired and moved away down in the Austin area. Aaron Riffey. So all my staff went to work for USDA. We arranged that. So they had job security. I still work with DHS. I wanted to pursue some different things. So Eugene Cole retired about a year or so ago. Brilliant guy. He's actually, we called him our biocontainment savant. Aaron Riffey, our lead contracting officer at the end. She works for USDA. Great lady. Tom Wilkinson, K-State grad, one of our lead construction oversight folks. Kimberly Kavanaugh, still with DHS, another contract person. Carlos Rodriguez, another construction oversight gentleman, also a K-State grad.
Interesting.
Darlene Young, who's now retired, was handled coordination of as-built drawings and all the different change orders that had to go into those. Brian Jorgensen, another construction oversight person, even though he was an Iowa State guy.
Really? We trusted that?
I know. Well, then Aaron's actually a KU grad. So, and then Jonathan Lagerquist, also another K-State guy. We didn't hire him just because they're K-State people. But that group of folks are the reason that we were able to give the money back to the state. Their diligence in the details. I mean, we get change orders and they'd say, well, what's this $300 for? And okay, you can't explain it. Okay, well, that comes out. I mean, that's the level of detail on a $1.25 billion project that these folks would get into. And so that's the reason we were able to give the money back. And then we had a reasonable expectations from the beginning. My folks at headquarters, the previous bosses, Jamie Johnson, who I mentioned earlier, and Julie Brewer, who's now Deputy Undersecretary for Science and Technology, working the headquarters scene so we could set a reasonable risk-based budget that was achievable rather than have to start cutting stuff. And that's a criticism in lots of projects like this is you get a baseline and then you got to do value engineering, you take stuff out. Okay, now we've taken too much out and now it doesn't do what we wanted it to. But yeah, we made it. It was a good
That's
team.
amazing.
We even got accolades from the National Academies of Science, which you don't get very often. That basically, in one of their reviews, said this facility provides the ideal functionality for the mission that it's assigned to. So anyway,
yeah. In other words, you're not going to poison all of Manhattan. That's what the
correct.
functionality means.
We'll go along with that. Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, there was concern about having this not just in Manhattan, but in Manhattan. I mean, it's right there off a major street.
Yes, there was. So there's biocontainment facilities level 4 in other places in the country.
Like
I mean,
Atlanta.
Yeah, right there. And so we used to hear the criticism. Well, hey, there's a reason that thing's on an island. Well, that's because when it was built, technology was different.
Yeah.
My flip answer, and I should not. I'm not giving that here. But at one time was, well, there's a reason you didn't have a cell phone back in the 50s too.
Right.
Technology didn't exist.
I had one, but anyhow, that's just bragging.
Your James Bond thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whatever. But yeah, so technology's changed and you can do these things safely. Now, you can't fall into the trap to say, yeah, everything's fine. It's all going to be good. I mean, I was asked this question one time because I used to do a lot of outreach, briefings for different community groups and all that. And a gentleman came up afterwards and said, can you guarantee? Now, actually, I think he asked that, in front of the whole audience. He goes, can you guarantee there will never be an accident or a release? I said, no, sir, nobody can guarantee that.
That's impossible.
But as soon as I, as the operating entity, tell you that, no, there will never be a release. Okay, now I'm complacent.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you're complacent in a facility like this, that's when you got to look out. So you always have to have an approach that things could happen, understand those risks, and what are the features, whether they're engineered controls or administrative controls, that mitigate those risks. And those are the kinds of things that USDA is taking on right now. I'm not involved in the operational stand-up with the facility anymore, but I do still talk with Dr. Alfonso Clavijo, who's the lab director, and they're instituting an approach called high reliability organization, which is like the gold standard for facilities like this, that basically sets out, the regime for being open and honest about what's going on, not being afraid to speak up and say, hey, I think this is a problem, and being taken seriously, and having approaches for non-attribution, for raising your hand and saying there's a problem. Because if you don't have a culture like that, then you're going to have problems with a facility like this. So they're going down a good road with approaches like that to ensure that it operates safely once the pathogens do come in.
Now, this might be something you can't address or aren't equipped to address, I guess is a better way to say it. But what will this facility do for Manhattan? I mean, we heard about companies relocating here to work with NBAF, to people coming in and going. I mean, is this going to be a real economic driver?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that from the very, very beginning.
Right.
And I will say, I think there are folks who have maybe overstated what that impact is. But I'll go back to DHS, and I won't speak for USDA, but DHS was not in the business of economic development.
Right.
This was the best place to put the facility. That's why we put it here. Is it likely that there are entities that are going to want to be close to this facility when it's up and operating? Yeah, it's likely. It's a facility of international significance, and will establish relationships with other such facilities, specifically facilities in Canada and Australia and the UK, for collaborations on certain aspects of research. But again, that's beyond my knowledge base right now, because I'm not involved in the operation of the facility anymore. But those facts alone, that given the nature of the facility, it is likely there is going to be, entities, corporate entities that want to be close to this. How much? Not for me to say. I mean, but if you look at just the employment, I mean, what is there, like 400 people employed there? So that alone, and they hired some local people, but there's a lot of people who have come from other places. The people from Plum Island are going to come here, some of them at some point, not all of them, certainly. So that alone has an impact on the community.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I can imagine some of the people from New York being asked to come to this Manhattan are like, well, no, I'm good.
Some of them actually love it. So there's some folks. So in general, the way it's going to work is at some point when Plum Island's ready to shut down, you get these transfer of function letters that says, okay, you can move to Manhattan and you have this job, or you're going to be, I can't think of the term for it. Basically, kicked out of the government, or
right?
Not kicked out. There's a word for it. I can't dial it up right now.
Because you're old.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That is true. So, but a lot of those folks are going to want to retire there anyway, because they grew up in that area. But there are several folks who aren't waiting for that. Plum Island folks have applied for open jobs here and moved here, and they love it. And that's happened, many times. So we started our own outreach. DHS started our outreach program. I initiated it, and then we hired Marty Veneer.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this before, as a IPA. What is it? A interagency personnel appointment or something like that. Basically, the government can hire folks from a university or not for profit, say, hey, we want you to come work for us. And so with Dr. Veneer's experience, both with BRI and then also her family in the business, the cattle business,
yeah.
It was very valuable to have that. So we established an outreach program, and then USDA has taken it and run with it. They have a very, very capable lady, Cathy, who's just done a dynamite job. But how you do that outreach and all that is very critical in a facility like this. Anyway.
You hired a Veneer. That's the most K-State thing to do.
I suppose so. You could say that, yes. But it was a very, very good choice. I mean,
she's awesome.
Yeah.
She's awesome. Okay, let's get to some important stuff so the government can stop listening. Let's talk gardening. Are we in a competition, or are we on the same team with our landscaping efforts? Are you competing with us, or are we competing with you, or are we just all in this together?
Is this a reference to host account?
Host account, we got you whooped.
So far.
I admire you. You're out there slaving away all the time. And I handle it like a red-blooded American. Honey, go out, work in the yard. That kind of stuff.
So I'm thinking in my brain, okay, I got to explain this part of the conversation. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know. I think we're on the same team.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like we got our own thing going on. We're, we have a few holes to fill here and there. So it's.
You got a whole lawn to fill over there. Yeah. You get to look at the undone area of the house with all the ground cover and weeds.
But the blue lights had a lot though now.
By the way, I need your advice on the placement and your thoughts on the blue lights, because this is important stuff, folks. This is the most important stuff you're going to have on this podcast, because I'm never out there at night. And plus you get the more, your room up there, whatever that is, your
kitchen,
probably evildoer's room, overlooks our garden over there on the
blue lights are lovely.
They work.
Yeah. It's it's your thing, man. We don't object.
There was some controversy over the blue lights. Originally had like blue and yellow lights, and that was vetoed. You know how that works. I
don't know that yellow would be good. Oh wait, who veto? Oh
yeah,
I'm going to back away from that. Whatever color lights you want, you do.
Yeah, I did. I did whatever color lights my wife wanted, so I did that. I'm not. She thinks I'm mentally disturbed with all the colored lights. It's like a damn. I don't know.
Like a high school kid's bedroom. Like a black light.
Exactly. We should put some black lights out there. You know that little area between us where all the ground cover grows and the weeds and that we can't kill. They're
right.
When we moved in, we quickly discovered marijuana plants because the teenager who lived here in like this 80s.
Oh dear. Oh yeah.
That was his little spot.
Yeah. Not surprising.
No,
not surprising. Wow.
They made me pull them out. But we could actually grow crop.
You could. Again, I like my job.
This is going to be my favorite part about this is making you uncomfortable because your bosses are watching.
I don't have to send them the link.
Let's talk about another important topic. Bourbon. If you had to pick right now, if you were going to have a glass of bourbon, and we're not going to do that right now because this is a professional podcast. What bourbon or whiskey would you pick?
So bourbon or scotch?
So you can do scotch.
So I'll do one of each.
Okay.
Bourbon, I would probably do Jefferson's Ocean.
Okay.
I just like that.
It just sounds fancy.
Scotch, probably a Lagavulin 16.
I think that's the one Becky's had before.
The Lagavulin 16?
Or
they have a 12.
It might have been, I don't know. We were in Kansas City at a place in Westport with the ladder, because they have to go up and get it. And so she asked the waitress, what's the best scotch I can make the bartender go all the way up the ladder for? And I thought, it's my sweet innocent wife. She just wants a good scotch. No, the bartender was cute, so she went.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I was proud of her.
Coming already.
I was proud of her. Like, oh, you totally played that. But I think it was that, and they brought it down, and she absolutely loved it. And I'm not a scotch drinker, so I took a sniff of it, and it smelled like old leather and Band-Aids.
That would be Lagavulin. Yes.
Yes, it's delicious. It's
or great. How are you supposed to pronounce it? I'm sure there's somebody listening who's going to say it's Lagavulin or whatever Scottish. Whatever.
It smells like old leather.
Yes,
and used Band-Aids.
Okay.
I don't know why you guys drink scotch. I don't understand the attraction of scotch. Why does my wife drink more manly drinks than I do?
So I never used to until son-in-law came along. I think I've told you this story before where when Emily and Brent were first dating, they were in Chicago, and son Eric happened to be here from Australia. And we get to Brent's condo to meet him, and Eric's already there, answers the door with a glass of expensive scotch, and is like, I think he'll be okay. It's like, yes, okay.
Nice.
That's how I got introduced to it. And I don't drink it all the time, but yeah, I kind of enjoy a nice glass of brown liquor now and then, whether it's bourbon or scotch.
I'm more of a bourbon guy, even than whiskey. My first guest of the season, Dr. Rosso, brought me a bottle of whiskey.
Is that saying I should have brought a bottle with me? Because I actually thought about it.
Well, it's funny. I think I finished off your whiskey the other night when we were over. Well,
only because I didn't have much more. We ran out. But actually, looking around, I don't see my cheese tray that I requested.
Oh yeah. It's the dogs got it.
Okay.
The dogs ate it. Dude spit some out. You can have that.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem.
Thank you.
And
music going down.
I don't know. I want to talk about music too. We kind of we're in like parallel lanes with music. We're not in each other's lane, but we're not that far off.
No.
But you go to concerts all the time, don't you?
Oh no, not really. We haven't gone to that many. Occasionally, I mean, we went to see Robert Plant, Alison Krauss last year at Starlight.
Those are two young and upcoming people, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, young and up and coming.
Yeah, kids, go check them out. Go check out Robert Plant.
We're going to Colorado in August and maybe see Head in the Heart in Aspen, but I don't know. It's so there's a venue, the Belly Up, yeah, Belly Up is a bar, I guess. I've never been there anyway. But it's crazy because Head and the Heart's playing one night and Spoon is playing the next night.
I don't know either of those
Oh,
groups.
sorry. Okay, that's what the kids listen to. I get that from I still listen to my old Chicago radio station when we lived in Chicago.
Because you're hip. Yep.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't know about that. It's just I don't change very well sometimes, I guess.
But you share this. You guys love to go to Colorado, so do we.
Yeah.
You hit Estes quite a bit, don't you?
We have a few times where we probably won't on this trip just to do something different, but we don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. We haven't booked a Colorado trip.
Yeah.
I'll probably sneak out there at some point.
Yeah. We're trying to get our priorities straight. Got to save up for that trip to Ireland next year.
Are you guys thinking about going?
So before that came about, because we have family in Australia, so we just did that, and that's
like halfway there.
They're the wrong way though.
I know.
And so that's always a big trip for us. We want to keep doing, but we've been talking about for some time a trip to Ireland, England, Scotland. I have Irish heritage, so it'd be good to do that. Well, then here comes the football game. I think, well, let's go then. So I think, right now we plan on going. We got to get an itinerary set, and
that's what we're working on.
We're not going to do a package from the school. We're just going to get tickets whenever they become available, which is, I think, the first of the year, I think they said.
Yeah. And I've got to work, of course, but I think we're just going to go over the week leading up and just do some day trips.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Maybe, go harvest some potatoes to get in touch with my heritage. A big potato harvest time.
Very good.
Another part of my heritage, and I think you could probably help me with this, is they have places where you pull this stick and beer comes out. And it fills up a cup. Sometimes it's like really dark, sludgy beer, like they got it from the bad pipes, and then you drink it. I've never been in one of those places before, but I hear they're all over Dublin.
I don't know what to say, Tim. Yeah, whatever.
This is what my neighbor puts up with constantly.
Yeah, I know. So the Guinness Brewery, maybe you're talking about there.
Yeah, that stuff. They got the world records too.
Yeah, there you go. Well.
Same company.
That one came late to my brain.
Same company.
Okay.
But no, we got to figure that out. I mean, it's going to be here before you know it.
Oh, I know.
I say that as we're not even to this season yet.
Well, yeah. And Cathy then said, hey, well, what is it? Americans starting new service to Brisbane out of Dallas. And so she's already looking at, maybe we go back to Australia again before we go to, so we have to work out an itinerary.
Have you thought about just doing the lap around the world? That'd be actually kind of cool.
Well, actually, yeah, we have. Someday if when I finally retire.
Which would be never.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, the government will come apart, Tim.
I think they would do just fine.
Whatever.
But yeah, that has crossed our minds. She won't do the sailing vacation with me because I used to, I think we talked before, sailed on Lake Michigan racing boats, and I can kind of handle a sailboat, although it's been a long time, so I probably forgot. But talking about doing a bareboat charter. She refuses because she's afraid of pirates in the Caribbean. So
that's a big.
She's seen the movie Pirates of the Caribbean, I guess.
I think I probably should come over someday dressed as a pirate to scare the hell out of your wife.
You already scared of that one time, you and Becky in the back seat of the car. Remember that one?
You were headed to Colorado, weren't you?
We were headed to Colorado. The car was all packed up, and you guys snuck over and got in the back seat without her knowing it. And she gets in the back seat, and she gets in the car, and there you are. And she's like, "Ah,
are you ready to go? We're ready to go too."
Now, this is going to be a very interesting link for my work people. But anyway.
No, they'll learn some stuff about you.
Yeah,
and they'll understand why you like to go to work so much, so you can get out of the neighborhood.
Okay.
And we're overdue for fire pit drinks here pretty soon, but I don't recommend a fire this time of season. It's a little warm.
Supposed to get down, I think Saturday night it's supposed to get down to like 61.
Well, we're doing it then. Well, probably rain.
I might be in bed, so we'll see. It's late.
It's what happens when you have elderly neighbors.
Are you talking?
I'm actually talking about you, but it kind of works both ways.
Say which okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, if you need anyone to haul the stuff, we'll just call it stuff from Plum Island, I got you.
I'll give him your number, Tim. I'll give him your number.
I mean, they never suspect it. They'll be looking for trains or planes, or they won't look for automobiles. And
yeah, okay.
Okay, well, that's it. I'm done talking to you, man. We probably need to go get a bourbon.
Holy moly!
What? Time flew.
I know it does when you're having fun.
Well, this too.
All right, it's been fun. Thank you.
Yeah, no, actually, you're far more interesting than I ever imagined.
Who would have thought that the mild-mannered civil engineer guy next door?
It's pretty cool when you look back at your career. Like, I'm going to stop playing football, and I think I'll do engineering.
Yeah. So there's I have two favorite phrases in dealing with work stuff. One is, hope is not a strategy. Somebody on my team says, well, I hope we can do this. I say, hope is not a strategy. What's the plan? How are we going to get this done? The other one, which would seem almost opposite, is sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Right.
And that's kind of defined me in some ways. And these things, falling into this job with Chicago and with the Army Reserve, falling in then with the follow-on job with the Department of Energy. And then this thing here, this NBAF. I mean, my gosh, I'm a Kansas kid. I grew up here, went to K-State, got to come back and do this big, cool project, here in Kansas, and give money back to the state that donated to us. And that's
nice.
That's a mic drop moment.
Yeah, I like it. Governor Kelly, I could use $1 million for landscaping because this is a very competitive neighborhood and I need your help.
I just want to be in charge of building the new Chiefs Stadium if Kansas does that.
You know what? Based on this, you should be in charge of it. But,
okay.
Plus we'd have great air pressure and ventilation.
Okay, yeah, whatever.
That's it.
All right.
We're done talking.
Very good. Thanks.
One of my goals in this interview was to make Tim as uncomfortable as possible because he had to get permission to talk from, the bosses. And so I knew they'd be watching to make sure he didn't say anything bad. So I wanted to really try to derail him. He did a good job. For the most part, he stayed on message. But I think you could see we have a pretty relaxed relationship, but he was in work mode. But that was interesting. Just an amazing facility. It'll be a real boon for the economy in Manhattan. And, the fact that they chose Manhattan says a lot about Kansas State University and its ag and engineering departments and everything that could be tapped into, that the federal government entrusted that for this community. So I said I was going to stack these up. Got a cool guest lined up for next week. And I know it's a cool guest because I'm recorded with him the day this one comes out. So I'm ready to go after the 4th. And then another really cool guest the day or the week after that. And I appreciate you watching so much. I've had a lot in studio. I never intended to have so many in studio, but that's just the way it's worked out this season. We got a lot of other guests lined up. And we'll keep going forward in this podcast and in life. And if you haven't heard, I've been taken off of treatment. And I've been moved into observation, which means the cancer isn't active, and we'll see what it does over the next 3 years. We'll keep an eye on it. And if it stays inactive after 3 years, I will be in remission. The fight goes on, but it's some really happy news this week. Appreciate you all listening and watching, and I'll talk to you real soon. I appreciate you listening to this week's edition of Life of Fitz. And thank you to all the great people at Blueville Nursery for sponsoring our show. This has been a Spirit Street production.